He spent 36 years convincing the world he was a faithful husband and a brilliant billionaire. But one hidden photograph turned Sandra Templeton from his biggest believer into the woman who exposed him and walked away while he stood there, powerless to stop her. Hi, my shining family. Welcome back to this little corner of the internet where broken hearts come to tell the truth and walk out stronger than they came in. If no one has spoken life over you today, let this be the moment. You are not a mistake, you are not invisible, and you are not as trapped as your fears want you to believe. This channel doesn't speak to numbers on a screen. It speaks to one heart at a time, yours. If you can still believe that real love should feel safe, type, "I'm still standing" in the comments, and if this story touches you, tap that like button as your way of sending a little courage back to this family. Now wrap this next part around you like a warm shawl on a cold night. May your home be a place where your voice is never silenced. May your children, present or future, grow up watching you choose yourself instead of begging to be chosen. May every tear you cried alone in the dark return to you as wisdom, and may the doors that slam in your face only guide you toward rooms you truly deserve. And above all, may you never stay where love has to be begged for. Take a deep breath with me. Let's step into Sandra's world. Afternoon light slides across the glass walls of Blackwell House, turning the billionaire's mansion into a glittering museum of the life Sandra Templeton built around her husband's dreams. For 36 years, she has been the quiet center of this empire, the woman in the photos, the steady hand behind the gala menus, the voice that prays over Josh Blackwell's flights while the world praises his genius on magazine covers. Today, she moves through his private study with the same practiced grace you see in that thumbnail, chin lifted, eyes sharp, a woman who has learned to carry elegance like armor. She is only supposed to be straightening awards and clearing a little shelf space before the planners arrive for their 36th anniversary celebration. A night, Josh says, will honor the love story that started it all. Her fingers trail over framed certificates, dusting, adjusting, doing the invisible work she has always done. Then her knuckles tap against the back of a built-in bookshelf, and instead of solid wood, she hears a hollow echo, a secret space in a room she thought she knew better than her own reflection. Sandra pauses. For 3.5 decades, when something in this house felt off, she talked herself out of it. Blamed it on stress, on travel, on the price of loving a man the whole world wanted a piece of. But today, something inside her refuses to look away. She presses again. A slim panel shifts with a soft, traitorous click, revealing the metal edge of a lockbox tucked behind Josh's trophies. She tells herself it's probably nothing. Old contracts, boring tax documents, the kind of clutter billionaires forget they have. Still, her hand closes around the box. The key on her ring fits too easily. When the lid lifts, a single photograph lies on top, waiting for her like evidence in a trial she didn't know she was already in. And the moment Sandra's eyes land on that image, 36 years of marriage stop feeling like a love story and start looking exactly like what they have always been, a crime scene. This is where Sandra's real story begins. After 36 years of wedlock, it took one photograph to destroy the world she thought she lived in. Night wraps itself around Blackwell House like tinted glass, glossy and impenetrable from the outside, full of shadows on the inside. Sandra lies on her back in the middle of the California king bed, eyes open, watching the ceiling fan cut lazy circles through the dark. Josh's side of the mattress is smooth and untouched, his pillow still bearing the faint cologne he swore he only wore for her. "Zurich," he said, kissing her forehead that morning. "Another board, another deal, another step toward the legacy our grandchildren deserve." Legacy. The word tastes different now. Sour. Rusted. Sleep never comes. Every time she closes her eyes, the photograph blooms on the inside of her eyelids. Josh in that white linen shirt, the younger woman in a red sundress pressed against him like she belongs there. The little boy with Josh's dimple latched onto his trouser leg. A family snapshot from a life Sandra never got an invitation to. At 2:17 a.m., she gives up pretending. She swings her legs over the edge of the bed, the hardwood floor cool beneath her bare feet, and crosses the room to the walk-in closet. On the top shelf, behind a row of hat boxes, waits the lockbox she slid there hours before, wrapped in one of Josh's garment bags like any other piece of his wardrobe. Her hands don't tremble this time. The combination wheel turns, numbers clicking into place with treacherous ease. The lid lifts, and the photograph stares up at her again, smug and sun-drenched. "Not tonight," she whispers. Tonight, it's not the picture she wants. It's everything underneath. She sets the photo aside and begins to pull out the contents one by one, laying them in neat rows across the bedspread. Airline itineraries printed on premium paper. Receipts from private aviation companies. Reservation confirmations from resorts Sandra has only ever seen in passing on luxury travel commercials. Then the bank statements. Not from the institutions she knows, the family's longtime bank, the wealth management firm whose Christmas parties she attends like clockwork, but from places whose names sound more like shell games than safes. Cayman, Monaco. A bank in a tiny European principality she has to sound out syllable by syllable. The balances make her mouth go dry. 9 figures, more. Money that never passed through the ledgers she reviews with the family office every quarter. Money that never helped pay for college or scholarships or the women's shelter wing she begged Josh to endow, and he said they couldn't justify yet. At the bottom of the stack waits a sleek, cream-colored folder stamped with the logo of a charitable foundation she has never heard spoken aloud at any gala, any strategy meeting, any tax briefing. Blackwell Global Hope Initiative. Hope. He really put that word on stolen money. Sandra picks up her phone. The screen lights her face in a dim blue glow, sharpening the angles the years have carved there. She starts with the basics, snapping photographs of every page, every line item, every signature. Her fingers move steadily, methodically, as if she is taking inventory of a stranger's estate. When she reaches the tropical photo again, something makes her pause. A line flashes in her memory, something one of the kids said about metadata and how your phone knows more about you than your diary ever did. Modern photos can carry hidden tags, coordinates, timestamps, even the device used, baked into the file the way flour is baked into bread. She raises the print to the lamp, then flips it. Nothing but glossy paper. Still, the idea burrows in. She unlocks her phone, opens the camera app, and takes a clean, high-resolution shot of the picture. A few taps later, she is staring at details Josh never meant her to see. Latitude and longitude, a resort name tucked into the location field. A date and time that slot neatly into the week he was supposedly sleeping in a plastic recliner beside his mother's ICU bed. Her heartbeat stutters. She scrolls. The same coordinates appear again and again, year after year, always inside the same 2-week window he has spent at the Future Tech Summit in Dubai. Dubai, her mind echoes. Or Dubai. The air in the bedroom feels thinner. Sandra sets the phone down long enough to reach for the foundation file. Inside, glossy brochures about uplifting communities, grant agreements with vague descriptions, and wiring instructions that route donations through a maze of intermediary accounts before they land anywhere near the stated projects. This is where the old Sandra would stop. She would tell herself there is a reasonable explanation, that she just doesn't understand the complexities of high-level finance, that Josh will walk her through it with that patient smile he reserves for investors and fools. But there is a new Sandra sitting on the edge of the bed tonight. and she has already seen a photograph that burned the last of her naivete to ash. She opens a private browser and types the foundation's name. For a long, unnatural moment, nothing happens. Then the search results populate in a cascade of languages and headlines. Not glossy press releases, not glowing charity profiles, court dockets, regulatory notices. A dense PDF from a foreign watchdog agency flagging significant irregularities in the way Blackwell Global Hope moves money. Sandra scrolls, pulse thudding in her throat. She translates as best she can, leaning on the tiny translate button when she gets lost in official phrasing. Words leap out at her even in broken English. Embezzlement, diversion, criminal probe, sealed testimony. Halfway down the page, a different kind of link catches her eye. A local news article, years old, about a young investigative journalist whose car lost control on a coastal highway in bad weather. 2 paragraphs from the bottom, her name is tied to a series she'd been writing about fraudulent charities moving tech money offshore. One of the entities she named in her final published piece, Blackwell Global Hope Initiative. The laptop glow in Sandra's lap turns her stomach green. She clicks the woman's headshot. A smiling face fills the screen, bright, earnest, the kind of woman Sandra might have mentored if life had gone another way. The caption calls her death a tragic accident. The sidebar notes almost casually that the investigation was closed within a week. An icy thread winds down Sandra's spine. "Stop," part of her whispers. "Call him. Demand answers. Scream until he tells you this is all a misunderstanding." She can almost see it. Dialing his number, listening to the familiar international ring, hearing his smooth, practiced surprise. "Sandra, darling, what are you talking about? You must have misread that. You know how complicated these things are. Trust me. Trust me." The 2 words that built their empire. The 2 words that now feel like a noose. Another part of her, older than the marriage, older than the girl from Detroit who once thought love meant choosing his dream over hers, knows better. This is the same instinct that helped him land their first investors, the same strategic mind that could read a room before Josh ever opened his mouth. Information first, that voice says. Emotion later. Slowly, deliberately, Sandra begins to organize the chaos she has just unleashed. She creates a new folder on her phone, then hesitates, and instead opens a secure app one of her sons showed her for private notes. She had smiled at the time, teasing him about secret romances. Now she uses it to build a case. Image after image flows into the encrypted vault. The tropical photo, the bank statements, the flight manifests, screenshots of the court filings, the article about the dead journalist. She renames the folder with something harmless, a string of numbers that only she will recognize as the date of their wedding. When it is done, she sits very still, the house humming softly around her with its hidden systems and silent alarms. Outside, the ocean beats against the rocks below like a slow, patient heart. For 36 years, Sandra Templeton has used her sharpest instincts to shield Josh Blackwell from the world. Tonight, for the first time, she turns those instincts on him. She closes the lockbox, slides it back into the shadows of the closet, and walks to the window, phone warm in her palm, evidence tucked away behind a wall of numbers and passwords. "I will find out everything," she murmurs to her own reflection. Not for him. For herself. Then she turns off the light, and the master bedroom sinks into darkness, but the screen in her hand still glows, quiet, relentless, and full of secrets she is finally ready to see. Morning drags itself over the horizon, thin and gray, by the time Sandra finally shuts her eyes. When she wakes again, the house is flooded with bright coastal light, and the lockbox might as well be sitting on her chest. The day moves around her in practiced motions. She answers emails about caterers, confirms flower orders, nods through a conference call with the gala planner. Her voice sounds normal. Her hands never shake. Years of being Mrs. Blackwell have trained her to perform even while the floor is cracking under her feet. But under the tailored blouse and flawless makeup, another woman has woken up. The girl from Detroit. She used to sit at a wobbly drafting table in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled of oil paint and fried chicken from the neighbor downstairs. Back then, Sandra Morrison drew skylines on cheap paper, buildings with curved glass and green roofs, staircases that wrapped like ribbons, while Josh paced behind her with a second-hand laptop and fever in his eyes. "Just until the company takes off," he'd said, kissing the graphite off her fingers. "Put the architecture thing on pause, Sandy. I need you. No one reads people like you do." So she shelved the portfolio, sold her textbooks, and learned to translate his brilliance into language nervous investors could swallow. She watched their rent checks bounce, turned coupons into dinners, wore the same black dress to 3 different pitch nights because optics mattered, and it was the only one that passed. He promised they would circle back to her dreams. They never did. Now, decades later, she stands in a different office, her own sitting room, all cream and chrome, and pulls out her phone. The woman in the red dress stares back from the screen, frozen on that dock, 20-something and lit from the inside with a trust Sandra remembers having once. "Who are you?" Sandra whispers. "And what did he tell you?" She starts with what she can control. First call, her brother, Marcus, older by 3 years, still in Detroit, a union man who never trusted tech people, no matter how many magazine covers Josh collected. "San, you sound like you're about to fire somebody," he says after hello. "Not somebody," she answers. "Everybody who's ever lied to me." She doesn't dump everything on him. She knows how fast stories travel through families. Instead, she gives him the cleaned-up version, irregularities in Josh's charity work, offshore funds she can't account for, a feeling in her bones that something is very, very wrong. "I need 2 people," she says. "A forensic accountant who isn't afraid of big numbers and someone who knows how federal investigations work. Off the books. Quiet." Marcus exhales a low whistle. "You finally ready to stop covering for that man?" "I'm ready to know what I'm covering," she replies. "Can you help me or not?" He can. By evening, she has 2 names in her inbox. The accountant, Priya Desai, is all precise emails and encrypted links, the kind of woman who probably color codes her own nightmares. She asks for scanned copies of everything related to Blackwell Global Hope Initiative, every bank statement, every document bearing Josh's signature that Sandra can legally access. "The key," Priya writes, "is to follow the money like it's a living thing. It always crawls back to whoever owns it." The retired federal investigator, meanwhile, prefers a phone call. "Name's Daniel Klein," he says, voice sandpaper rough. "Your brother says you're sharper than most of the agents I trained. That true?" "Depends on the day," Sandra answers. "Today I'm just a wife who found a lockbox full of lies." She meets him the next afternoon in a quiet hotel lounge 2 towns over, sunglasses on, hair wrapped in a silk scarf like she's hiding from the paparazzi instead of her own life. Daniel arrives in a worn blazer, moving like a man who has learned to pay attention to every doorway. She slides a tablet across the table, loaded with copies of the documents and the photo. "I want you to trace the foundation, the island in this picture, and anything my husband owns that never made it onto our marital paperwork," she says. "I need to know how far this goes." Daniel studies the image of Josh and the woman in red, his gaze lingering on the boy. "You realize," he says slowly, "if I do this right, I'm not just going to find money. I'm going to find people. I'm counting on it." For the next week, Sandra lives in 2 timelines at once. In one, she is the polished wife, attending a museum fundraiser, smiling for photographers at Josh's side in a black gown that hugs her still beautiful frame. Women compliment her earrings. Men tell her she hasn't aged a day. Josh's hand rests on the small of her back like a brand. In the other, she moves alone through the quiet pockets of her days, eyes locked on screens and reports. Priya's updates drip into her inbox like acid. Shell companies nested inside shell companies, some formed before their second child was born. Property records from cities Sandra has only visited on vacation, listing female managers as owners of beachfront condos and hillside villas paid for with foundation funds. A private jet registered to an entity called Blake Holdings, flying a repeating route, New York to a specific Caribbean island, then onward to conferences Josh is supposedly attending alone. "Your husband's very good at being other people," Priya notes in one message. "He signs as J. Blake on some of these, not illegal in itself, just convenient." At night, when the house is quiet and the ocean presses its dark face against the windows, Sandra hunts for the woman in the red dress. She runs searches on every platform she knows, tries combinations of Blake, Blackwell, the resort name, the island. She zooms in on the photo until the pixels blur, studying the curve of the woman's jaw, the small scar near her eyebrow, the way she leans into Josh like someone who has been told she's safe. Nothing. No tagged photos, no alumni pages, no corporate bios. It's as if this woman lives only in places Josh controls. His arm, his villa, his lockbox. As if someone took an eraser and scrubbed her out of the public world. The thought makes Sandra's skin crawl. She closes her laptop, paces the length of the bedroom, memories rising like ghosts. The early years when she was the one always behind the camera, never in front of it. The first time a magazine profiled Josh and cut her name from the caption under their wedding photo. The way his PR team called her background. How easy would it be, she wonders, to erase a woman who was never allowed to be more than background? 3 days later, her phone rings while she's sitting at the kitchen island pretending to read a menu proposal. The caller ID shows Daniel's number. Her pulse jumps. She answers on the second ring, voice steady. "This is Sandra. We've been digging," he says without preamble. The clink of glass in the background suggests he's in some anonymous bar, the kind that doesn't ask questions. "You were right about the alias. There's a whole other life built under the name Joshua Blake. Companies, accounts, you name it." A silence stretches between them. Sandra stares at the photo tacked to the inside of her mind. The red dress, the little boy, the way Josh's hand curls possessively at the woman's waist. "And her?" she asks. "The woman on the pier?" Daniel exhales a low, uneasy sound. "That's why I called," he says. "We found her. And Sandra." She grips the edge of the marble counter, knuckles whitening. She's not just a mistress. Sandra doesn't realize she's holding her breath until her vision sparks at the edges. "She's not just a mistress," Daniel repeats, softer this time, as if the words themselves might bruise. "What is she?" Sandra asks. Her voice sounds like someone else's, lower, flatter, emptied out. "Meet me tomorrow," he says. "Someplace quiet. I'll bring everything." They choose a hotel cafe 40 minutes from the coast, the kind of place where businessmen take calls in low voices and nobody looks twice at a woman in sunglasses drinking tea at noon. Sandra arrives early and takes a corner table facing the door. Her reflection in the window looks composed, controlled, like every society page photo ever printed of her. Inside, she is nothing but exposed wiring. Daniel appears exactly on time, a worn leather messenger bag slung across his shoulder. He sits, nods once in greeting, then unzips the bag and pulls out a slim folder. "Joshua Blake," he says, tapping the name printed at the top of the first page. "Your husband's favorite alter ego, legally married on paper to a woman named Elena Ruiz in St. Aurelia, one of those little Caribbean jurisdictions that prides itself on privacy." He slides the marriage certificate toward her. There's Josh's face in a grainy photocopied photo, hair a little longer, jaw a little softer. Next to him stands the woman from the pier, dark hair pinned up, red dress swapped for a simple white slip. The officiant's stamp is real. The date is 12 years ago. Sandra's throat tightens. He married her, she murmurs, while he was still married to me. Bigamy laws get messy when you start crossing borders, Daniel says. That's what men like him count on. He lays out more documents. Villa deeds listing the owner as Blackwell Global Hope Initiative, utility bills sent to Mrs. Elena Blake, school records for a boy named Mateo Ruiz Blake, currently enrolled in an international academy in Spain. The foundation pays all tuition and housing costs. Quiet kid, Daniel adds. No social media in his name. A few team photos from the school's website, but that's it. Looks a lot like the boy in your doc picture. Sandra stares at the grainy image of a teenager in a soccer jersey, legs braced, eyes narrowed against the sun. Her eldest son's eyes stare back at her from a different face. What about the journalist? She asks. The one who died. Daniel pulls out a thin stack of photocopied articles and handwritten notes. She was building a series on corrupt tech philanthropy. Blackwell Global Hope popped up 3 times in her drafts. She tracked money from your husband's companies through the foundation into Blake Holdings, then onto politicians and consultants connected to St. Aurelia's banking sector. He flips to the last page. A scribbled note in the dead woman's handwriting circles 2 phrases. Joshua B. Blake, and Villa 14, Coral Bay. Sandra recognizes the address from the villa deed. She died in a car accident a week after filing a records request on that property, Daniel says. Local investigation closed fast. Too fast. He doesn't say what they're both thinking. Accidents happen. Some of them just happen around men with too much to lose. For a moment, Sandra lets her gaze drift to the cafe window. Outside, the world moves as if nothing is wrong. People with shopping bags, a mother dragging a laughing toddler, a teenager scrolling on her phone. An entire planet spinning on, unaware that a man like Josh has built himself 2 lives on top of one woman's body and another's erased existence. So, what now? She asks quietly. You have enough to go to the authorities? Not yet, Daniel says. We have smoke. We need fire. That's where your forensic accountant comes in. She'll follow the money. I'll follow the people. Lifestyle analysis, hidden accounts, undisclosed properties, the usual drill. He leans in. There's something else you need to understand. Elena? She's not listed anywhere as an employee or consultant. On paper, she doesn't earn a cent. Everything she has is tied to him and that foundation. If he pulls the plug, she and the boy drop straight through the floor. The realization cuts deeper than she expects. For a split second, Elena stops being the woman in red and becomes another version of Sandra from years ago, young, dependent, believing a man when he says, "Trust me." Daniel sees the change in her face. You can walk away from this, he says. Take the pieces you've got, lawyer up, protect your kids. Nobody would blame you. Sandra picks up the marriage certificate again, fingers tracing the blurred outline of Elena's ring. On the back of the page, the dead journalist's handwriting ghosts through the paper, faint but insistent. If I walk away, she says slowly, he keeps all of it. The money, the lies, the power. Maybe the next woman who threatens him has an accident too. She sets the page down, spine straightening. No, we don't walk away, not this time. Daniel studies her for a long moment, then nods once like a soldier accepting orders. Then we keep digging, he says, deeper than he ever imagined we could. Sandra slips the photocopies back into the folder and tucks it into her bag. As she stands, the room seems to sharpen around her. The clink of cups, the murmur of conversation, the hiss of the espresso machine. Somewhere on a sun-struck island, a woman wears a simple gold band and calls herself Mrs. Blake. Somewhere in Spain, a boy with Josh's eyes wonders why his father never stays long. Somewhere in a graveyard, a journalist lies under earth that settled too quickly. Sandra walks out of the cafe with all of them in her mind and only one thought steady in her chest. If Josh Blackwell built a world on other people's silence, then her voice is going to be the thing that finally brings it down. Josh comes home 3 days later, wheeling a sleek silver suitcase through the front door like a man returning from a harmless business trip instead of a double life. "San," he calls, voice echoing off marble. "You won't believe the deal we just closed." He smells like airport cologne and expensive coffee when he bends to kiss her cheek in the foyer. Cameras flash from the driveway as a paparazzo gets his shot of the power couple reunited. Sandra smiles for the lens, chin tilted every inch the devoted wife. Inside, she imagines those same lenses catching him in a different doorway, with a different woman, on a different continent. Over the next week, Blackwell House becomes command central for the anniversary gala. Florists come and go. Event planners swarm the ballroom with fabric swatches and lighting diagrams. Their adult children orbit the chaos. Noah barking into his phone about seating charts. Ava arguing with the DJ over playlists. Jordan raiding the kitchen for childhood favorites. "Dad, this is insane," Ava laughs one afternoon, taking in the ice sculpture mock-up. "You're going to make Mom cry." "Oh, that's the plan," Josh says, sliding an arm around Sandra's shoulders. "Happy tears only." Sandra lets herself lean in just enough for the cameras snapping behind them. Later, she will wonder if anyone watching the footage notices how her eyes never quite match her smile. Between tastings and fittings, her other life hums in the background. Emails from Priya arrive in an encrypted thread, each subject line a new crack in the facade. Your husband's reported income versus documented spending don't align. Multiple luxury properties owned by entities linked to the foundation. Regular payments to security consultants operating in countries with flexible law enforcement. Lifestyle analysis doesn't lie, Priya writes in one message. He lives like a man with far more declared wealth than any public filings support. The gap has to be coming from somewhere. Daniel's updates are rougher, delivered by phone in clipped sentences. He's traced Blake Holdings through airports, marinas, and hotel registries. One security firm on Josh's retainer shows up in 2 separate reports about disappeared activists. He's not just hiding money, Daniel says. He's paying to make problems vanish. At dinner one night, Sandra tests her husband's mask. They sit at opposite ends of the long mahogany table, candles throwing soft gold over their plates. The children are out. Staff has been dismissed early. "How was Zurich?" she asks, cutting into her salmon. "You sound less jet-lagged than usual." Josh barely looks up from his phone. "You get used to it," he says. "Besides, half the meetings were on the island." "The island?" she repeats mildly. He finally meets her gaze, eyes narrowing just a fraction, as if weighing how much she knows. "You know, the retreat spot the summit people use, off-schedule sessions, donor bonding, all that." "I must have forgotten," Sandra says, taking a sip of wine to hide the way her pulse spikes. "What's it called again?" "Coral Bay," he says without thinking. "Why?" She lets a beat of silence stretch, then smiles. "Just trying to keep up with your glamorous life, Mr. Blackwell." He relaxes, chuckling, and launches into a story about a venture capitalist who drank too much rum on the beach. She files the slip away. Coral Bay, not Dubai. For a man so careful, it was a dangerous crack. That night, once he is asleep beside her, Sandra takes a new phone from the back of her closet. It's a cheap, unremarkable model she bought in cash at a mall kiosk 2 towns over. No contacts, no apps, no history. She powers it on and types out the first message to the encrypted address Daniel sent her, a relay point to contact Elena without tipping off anyone watching her devices. My name is Sandra Templeton. You know my husband as Joshua Blake. I think we need to talk. She stares at the words until the letters blur, then hits send. A minute ticks by, then another. She is about to give up and turn off the phone when the screen lights with a single reply. Who gave you this address? Sandra exhales, thumbs hovering. Someone who believes we're both living in a story he wrote for us, she types. I'm ready to rewrite mine. Are you? The typing indicator blinks on, goes dark, blinks again. Finally, a time and a city name appear on the screen, followed by one last message. No names, no photos. If he finds out, we both lose everything. Sandra turns off the burner and tucks it under her pillow. For the first time in 36 years, she is planning a meeting with another woman about her husband, and the goal is not to save the marriage, but to bury the man. They choose a public place that still feels hidden, a botanical garden cafe in a city where Josh rarely does business. Families drift along the paths with strollers and ice creams. Retirees photograph roses. No one looks twice at two women sitting at a corner table under a pergola thick with wisteria. Sandra arrives early again. Old habit. She orders tea she won't drink and watches the entrance, every muscle tight. When Elena walks in, Sandra knows her instantly. Time has softened the edges of the woman from the dock, but the bones are the same. The delicate jaw, the strong brows, the wary eyes that scan the crowd before she moves. She wears jeans and a loose white blouse, hair pulled back, no makeup. A simple gold band still circles her left hand. She spots Sandra, stops, and for a heartbeat looks like she might turn and run. Then she exhales and comes forward. I only have an hour, she says, sitting without offering her hand. Her accent carries something coastal and warm, smoothed by years abroad. After that, my son will start asking questions. Thank you for coming, Sandra says. They regard each other in silence. The official wife and the hidden one, two lives orbiting the same man. Somewhere in a parallel universe, Sandra thinks, they might have been friends. Why now? Elena asks at last. You've had him for 36 years. Why suddenly care who else he lies to? Sandra doesn't flinch. Because I finally saw the photograph, and I saw what he's been doing with the money attached to your villa. Something flickers across Elena's face. Fear, anger, maybe both. He promised that house was in my name, she says, that even if things changed, Mateo and I would be safe. Sandra slides a printed deed across the table. The foundation's name sits clearly where Elena was sure hers would be. I'm sorry, Sandra says quietly. He lied to you the same way he lied to me. Elena's fingers tremble as she traces the ink. Tears pool but do not fall. She swallows them down like she's had practice. He told me he was divorced, she whispers, that you were just an image, something the board insisted on. He said you were cold, controlling, that you loved the money more than him. Sandra lets the words pierce her. They hurt, but they also tell her exactly how Josh controlled the narrative, pitting one woman's insecurities against another's absence. I am none of those things, she says, but I did help him build the image that kept you in the dark. For that, I am sorry too. They talk in broken pieces. Elena describes meeting Josh at a tech summit where she was working as an interpreter, how he charmed her in 2 languages, how he flew her to Coral Bay just for a week, and somehow the week never ended. He said the island was our secret, she says. He opened accounts, gave me cards, said I never had to work again. When I got pregnant, he cried, said this was his second chance to be the father he'd always wanted to be. And when you asked for more? Sandra prompts. Elena smiles without humor. There was always a reason to wait. The divorce settlement wasn't final. The board was nervous. The regulators were sniffing around. Once this blows over, mi amor, I'll make everything official. Her voice drops. Last year, he started talking about disappearing for a while. Said if certain people didn't stop asking questions, he'd have to reset somewhere else. He joked that Mateo and I should practice our Spanish in case we ended up in South America. South America, Argentina. Sandra hears the echo of the one-way ticket Daniel found in the safety deposit box. Did he ever mention another woman? Sandra asks. Someone before you who caused problems? Elena's gaze drifts past Sandra's shoulder to a patch of sunlight where a little girl chases a butterfly. There was a name he never said, but he reacted when I brought her up, she says. I read an article about a woman who died in a boating accident near Coral Bay. I asked if he knew her. He went very, very still. Told me not to believe gossip, that some people couldn't handle island life. Camilla, Sandra thinks. She doesn't say it out loud. In return, she lays her own cards on the table. The 40-year relationship, the children, the ICU week that now smells like sunscreen instead of antiseptic. The dead journalist who followed the money to Elena's front door and never left the island alive. By the time she finishes, both women look like they have been standing in the ocean too long, wave after wave hitting the same bruises. So we are two birds in one cage, Elena says finally, just different perches. We don't have to stay there, Sandra replies. Daniel and Priya are building a case. They'll need proof from your side, emails, messages, any threats he made if you talked, bank alerts, photos, anything that shows the promises he used to keep you quiet. Elena stiffens. If he finds out I helped you, he will cut you off? Sandra finishes gently. Elena, he already planned to. The foundation is under investigation. If it collapses, so does your safety net. At least this way, you stand a chance of claiming what you and your son are owed. For a long time, Elena says nothing. Her knuckles whiten around her coffee cup. Somewhere a child laughs, shrill and bright, slicing through the heavy air. At last she nods, once, like a diver stepping to the edge of the board. I'll send what I have, she says. But if he comes after my boy, he won't get the chance, Sandra says. Not if we move first. They exchange contact details via the burner phone relay. No real numbers, no surnames. As they stand to leave, Elena hesitates. He told me once, she says quietly, that if anything ever truly threatened him, the only person who could destroy his world was you. Sandra absorbs that, lets it settle like a stone in her palm. Then let's make sure he was right, she answers. They walk away in opposite directions, two women carrying the same ghost on their backs, finally beginning to talk to each other instead of about the man who put it there. Time fractures into lists, guest lists, task lists, evidence lists. By day, Sandra is the general of an opulent celebration. She approves menu tastings and argues over centerpieces. She chooses a gown the color of spilled ink and has it tailored to fit like armor. She tours the ballroom with the lighting team, nodding as they promise to make the chandeliers look like stars. By night, she is something else entirely. On encrypted calls, she and Daniel coordinate with two federal agents who have been quietly building their own file on Blackwell Global Hope for years. She shares Priya's spreadsheets, arrows of money leaping from foundation accounts to Blake Holdings to politicians and fixer firms. The agents share sealed warrants sitting with a judge, waiting for the right moment. We time it with maximum visibility, one of them says. You want his mask ripped off in front of the people who enabled him? A live-streamed gala will do it. Sandra doesn't flinch. Then that's where we do it. She spends a long, sleepless night at her desk drafting 3 handwritten letters, one to each child. She does not confess everything. Some truths belong in court, not on stationery. Instead, she tells them what matters, that she loves them, that their father's crimes are not their inheritance, that when the world starts shouting, they must remember who was actually in the room bleeding. She seals each envelope and locks them in a drawer with instructions for her attorney. Deliver only if anything happens to her. 2 mornings before the gala, Josh wanders into the kitchen in bare feet and a faded college t-shirt. For a moment, he looks like the boy she met in Detroit, the one who slept on foam mattresses and drew circuit diagrams on pizza boxes. "Coffee?" he asks, kissing her temple. She passes him a mug, watching the way his fingers curl around the handle, the easy looseness in his shoulders. He has no idea the noose is already knotted. "You should be proud of this, you know," he says, gesturing with the mug toward the ballroom. "Everyone's talking about how legendary this party is going to be. 36 years. We're the proof love and business can coexist." "Are we?" Sandra asks softly. He chuckles, missing the steel in her voice. "Don't get sentimental on me, San. We're a power couple. People need to believe in that." She holds his gaze over the rim of her cup. "Oh, they'll believe something after that night," she says. "I can promise you that." He just grins and launches into a story about an upcoming IPO. Gala night arrives on a wind of perfume and exhaust. Limousines snake up the long drive. Security wands flash silver at the entrance. Inside, the ballroom glitters. Crystal, gold, and the calculated shimmer of wealth performing generosity. Sandra descends the grand staircase to a ripple of murmurs and camera flashes, draped in her ink-black gown, diamonds at her throat catching the light. She feels every eye in the room slide toward Josh, measuring his pride by the way he looks at her. Their children flank them for the family photo, Noah serious, Ava dazzling, Jordan half smiling like he's not sure what he's walked into. Somewhere near the back wall, Daniel stands in a tux that doesn't quite fit, blending in with the caterers and security. Federal agents position themselves as donors and plus ones. The program rolls on as planned. A welcome from the foundation director, a performance by a string quartet, a short speech from a celebrity ambassador about hope and innovation. Josh works the room like a politician, hugging old friends, teasing reporters, clinking glasses. Finally, the lights dim. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announces, "please turn your attention to the screens for a very special tribute to 36 years of love and legacy, the story of Josh and Sandra." Applause scatters through the room. Phones rise. People prepare to film the glossy montage they expect. In the control booth, the AV tech hesitates for a fraction of a second as the file list on his screen shifts. At his elbow, Daniel leans in just enough to murmur, "Play the one labeled Final Cut." Judge's orders will make sense in about 30 seconds. The first image that fills the massive screens is exactly what everyone expects. Sandra, as a young bride in a simple white dress, laughing up at Josh outside a tiny Detroit church. The room softens, a collective awe rising. The slide flicks. Josh freezes. Now the dock fills the screen, blue water, sun-bleached wood, Josh in a white linen shirt, arm wrapped around the woman in the red dress, the little boy clinging to his leg. The click of camera shutters stutters into silence. Somewhere, a fork clatters against china. Sandra stands, the remote cool in her hand. She walks to the center of the stage with unhurried steps, the hem of her gown whispering across the floor. "Good evening," she says into the microphone, voice steady as glass. "This is not the video my husband approved. It's the one I did." Behind her, the next image appears. A bank statement with the Blackwell Global Hope logo in the corner and an arrow of red light highlighting a transfer to Blake Holdings Limited. Then another slide. Villa deeds, school invoices, flight manifests. Guests twist in their seats, trying to look everywhere at once. At the screens, at Josh, at Sandra. Josh surges to his feet, face drained of color. "Turn that off!" he snaps toward the booth. "Now!" No one moves. At the doors, men and women who looked like ordinary security a moment ago shift. Hands going to inside pockets where sealed envelopes and badges wait. Sandra clicks again. Newspaper clippings about a dead journalist appear, her smiling headshot framed by headlines about tragic accidents and unanswered questions. A final slide shows the journalist's handwritten notes circling the words Blackwell Global Hope and Villa 14, Coral Bay. The room buzzes like a live wire. Sandra looks directly at her husband across the sea of stunned faces. His jaw clenches. Veins stand out in his neck. For the first time since she has known him, she sees something like genuine fear in his eyes. 36 years ago, she says, I promised to stand by a man I thought I knew. Tonight I'm going to introduce you to the man I actually married. Josh takes a step toward the stage. At the back of the room, 2 federal agents move in tandem, hands slipping into their jackets. The trap has sprung. For a second, time holds its breath. Then everything happens at once. Guests rise halfway from their chairs, some in protest, some in morbid fascination. Reporters at the press tables flip open notebooks and start recording. Josh pushes through the crowd toward the stage, ignoring the hands that reach to steady or stop him. "Sandra, that's enough," he snarls into the microphone as he mounts the first step. "Turn it off. We'll talk about this privately." She doesn't move. "There is no privately anymore, Josh," she says. "You turned our life into a public brand. Tonight, the truth gets the same treatment." An agent in a tux reaches the edge of the platform and flashes a badge just low enough for Josh to see. "Joshua Blackwell," he says, voice pitched not to carry beyond the first row. "We need you to come with us." Confusion ripples through the crowd. Someone shouts, "Is this a stunt?" Another voice, sharper, "Get your hands off him. Do you know who he is?" "Yes," Sandra answers, gaze never leaving her husband's face. "We all do now." Behind her, the slideshow loops through its most damning frames. Offshore transfers, shell company charts, security invoices, the wedding certificate from St. Aurelia with Joshua Blake's signature, and Elena's tired smile. Noah barrels up the side aisle, face white. "Mom, what are you doing?" he demands. "You're ruining him. You're ruining us." Ava follows, tears already streaking her mascara. "Dad, tell them it's a mistake," she pleads. "Tell them this is fake." Jordan stays in his seat, fists clenched on his knees, staring at the image of the dock as if trying to solve a math problem with his heart. "I'm not ruining anything," Sandra says, forcing her voice to stay gentle. "Your father did this. I'm just refusing to keep cleaning it up." Josh seizes on their distress. "You hear her?" he says, twisting free of the agent's grip for a second. "She's gone crazy. Someone's gotten into her head. Sweetheart, we can fix this. We control the narrative. We always have." The old reflex rears up in her chest, the urge to smooth, to soothe, to make herself smaller so his world doesn't wobble. She feels it, recognizes it, and lets it pass through her like a wave that no longer reaches shore. "No," she says softly. "You controlled it. Not anymore." She turns back to the microphone. "To the donors in this room, your generosity was used to buy silence, not hope. To the journalists, one of your own died chasing this story. Don't let her be a footnote. And to my children," her voice breaks for the first time. She doesn't hide it. "You are not your father's sins. When the headlines come, remember that you have the right to choose who you become." Security cameras, set up to capture B-roll of champagne flutes and laughter, now record federal agents reading Josh his rights as they guide him away from the stage. His tie hangs askew. His hair, so carefully styled, falls forward in damp strands. He looks smaller without a podium in front of him. "Sandra!" he shouts as they pull him back. Half command, half plea. The sound he has used for 36 years to summon her, to reset the scene, to pull her back into orbit. This time, she doesn't move. Officers and lawyers step into the space between them, forming a quiet wall of consequence. For once, Josh's outstretched hand cannot reach her. Flashing lights paint the ballroom windows red and blue as police cars and unmarked sedans flood the drive. Guests pressed against the glass gasp like children at a fireworks show. Some slip outside doors, not wanting to be seen leaving too late or too early. Others angle for better shots, phones held high. When the last slide fades and only the Blackwell House logo remains, a hollow symbol now, Sandra lowers the microphone. The MC stammers something about the program being concluded. Music does not start up again. No one wants to dance on a crime scene. She walks down from the stage, past toppled champagne flutes and abandoned handbags. Her children hover, 3 moons knocked out of orbit. Noah turns away, jaw clenched. Ava sobs openly, mascara streaking her cheeks. Jordan steps into her path, eyes bright with 100 unsaid questions. "We'll talk," she tells him, touching his arm. "Not tonight, but we will." Outside, the air is cold and wet, smelling of ocean and exhaust. Reporters surge toward her as soon as she appears, microphones like spears. "Mrs. Blackwell, did you know about the second marriage? Is it true the foundation funded political bribes? Did you leak documents to federal investigators?" She gives them the same answer over and over. No comment tonight. The evidence speaks for itself. What she does say, as she reaches the waiting car Daniel arranged, is for the cameras and for herself. "I am no longer Mrs. Blackwell," she tells them. "My name is Sandra Templeton. That's the only title that matters." The door closes on the shouting, on the flashing bulbs, on the mansion she refinished and decorated and scrubbed of his messes for 3 decades. As the driver pulls away, she watches Blackwell House recede in the rear window, a glittering cage on a cliff, lights burning in windows that no longer belong to her. Later, in a quiet apartment overlooking a very different stretch of water, Sandra stands at a small kitchen table. No marble, no crystal, just wood scarred by someone else's years. She takes off her wedding ring. For a moment, the groove it leaves on her finger feels raw and naked. She sets the ring down beside a printed copy of the doc photograph. Josh's smile beams up from the page. The woman in red leans into him unaware. The little boy clings to his leg. Sandra looks at the image one last time, then slides it into a plain folder with the rest of the evidence, ready for whatever hearings and trials come next. The ring she leaves on the table. Outside, sirens wail somewhere far away, then fade. The city hums. A kettle whistles softly on the stove. Sandra exhales, slow and deep. For 36 years, her life revolved around a man who believed she would crumble without him. Standing alone in this small, borrowed kitchen, heart battered but still beating, she realizes the truth. He was the one who never learned how to stand without her.